My name is Allie Moss, and I am one half of Thinking Outside the Blocks. We have our special guest here, Alex Wong, and he's going to do a production breakdown on a song called Me Forever. And to start off the class, I'm just going to share a beautiful making of video.
My sacred heart swells through cathedral bells, a lover forsaken. The carousel drones down the cobblestone, and something awakens. I hear you calling, I remember, this feeling follows me forever, me forever. The sidewalks I've known play an undertone of memories escaping. They echo down the canyon walls as the streetlights dissolve into shadows I'm chasing.
Oh, beautiful. I mean, just gorgeous. You're a multi-instrumentalist, producer, and an arranger. How was your beginning? If you give us a little background on like what's your first instruments, like what came first for you?
Hey everybody, I'm Alex Wong. I'm so happy to be here to talk about music, my favorite thing. Yeah, so I think I started as an instrumentalist. I started in classical music actually as a classical percussionist. So I was a drummer and a percussionist, and I went to school for percussion and performance and thought I was going to be in an orchestra my whole life, and I just wanted to play on movie scores and stuff like that. And then, a series of events turned my direction, and I happened to, I played in my first rock band in college. I was a drummer in a rock band that ended up getting signed to Epic Records for a couple years, and it just introduced me to this whole new world of pop music, and I guess the more like industry side of things. And after that ended, I guess I was kind of like changed by that experience, and realized I really loved the creativity and the freedom of I guess of pop music, or of song-based music, where you could kind of pull from anywhere you wanted to tell your story, and also these these nice little like 3 to 5 minute little creations that you can make, and I just loved that, and I started to explore my own, I guess, what would it be like if I were to write songs, and I was not a singer. I still have trouble self-identifying as a singer now, but now it's something I do in order to tell a story that I want to tell. So I think now all of it, songwriting, production, arranging, all this stuff is just, they're all just tools to tell a story. So whichever thing is necessary, whether it's being a producer, being an arranger, or just being a lyricist, whatever it is, they're all kind of just serving the story that I want to tell.
Wonderful. Would you give us a background on how this particular song came to be? Sure.
So I'll give a little short background as to kind of my path as an artist. This was on a record that I released. It's the first record that I released under my own name. I put out one solo record before that under kind of like a moniker, and before that I had lots of bands, duos, collaborations, and as I was kind of learning how to use my own voice as a writer and an artist, and something that was hard for me was to allow myself to create under my own name. I don't know. I think everyone has different challenges in their path, and for me that was a challenge to kind of take up my own space as myself and put myself out there. And so this album was very personal, and like the themes on it had a lot to do with this journey. And so all the songs on the record have to do with like a complicated relationship with my memory of kind of my past, but also that I have all these weird memories from seem like other lives or other like dream states and stuff like that. And this song is actually about a nagging feeling of familiarity with Paris, and I had gone to two psychics years apart, totally separate, who both told me that I had several lives in Paris, and that I should go there and walk around and find my old house. And so the video the video we just saw was just me walking around with my phone, doing that, just sort of like wandering and feeling out if anything was resonating. And so it's kind of just this song is just sort of trying to capture that feeling, I guess, of remembering, of familiarity, of kind of like resonating with some place, and you may not always know exactly why, and just the idea that the idea of like me can be stretched out over like many lives. Like that all comprises this idea of who we are, at least in my view. So, typical pop song fodder.
Honestly, I feel that from not knowing that story. I felt that it almost moves me every single time I hear it. Like my eyes well up. I don't know what that means. So it's really gorgeous. Can you tell us a little bit about the songwriting process then? Like when you had that idea, how did you start translating that into this song?
Sure. I think something that I do as a producer, so I also work with a lot of other artists as a producer and writer, and I think learned it, from my process, both with other people and with myself. Like I was saying in the beginning, everything is kind of a tool to serve this story or this message, and I really believe in that kind of like hierarchy for me. So like all my choices when it comes to being a producer or even an engineer or a mixer all have to relate back to the emotional intentions. So I start with I have like chalkboard walls all over my studio, and whether I start with another artist or it's myself, I'll start by writing words on the walls. And if it's with another person, it's like I'll really just like, we kind of go crazy, and just any word that somehow tangentially relates to like an emotional tone or intention that we're trying to get across, just write the words on the wall. And pretty soon you get this mass of words that seem at first like they were unrelated, but then you start seeing these themes and these kind of connection points and things like textures or times of day or like temperature, or you get the scene, like a visual. I'm very visual with my music, and so I think a scene starts to come out. Like sometimes, like with this song, it was like, I remember kind of things like it was like an evening. I felt like it was evening. It was, there was like, this clear night. It was warm. It felt like stones. It felt like there was this fuzziness. So I get all these words, and then I start to be like, all right, how do I like describe this scene in music? And so kind of all the decisions from the arrangement to the like selecting your sonic palette, instrumentation, even like how you record a particular instrument, all kind of leads back to those intentions. And I'm just trying to describe something with every choice. And for me, it keeps me really focused, because these days it's like you literally can do anything. And so I like having this kind of like game plan or like this map that I'm following. So I always try to start with the map and be like, what's the picture we're trying to paint here, and then everything kind of serves that.
I love hearing all of this. It's really inspiring. Do you want to open your session maybe and start kind of sharing maybe some of the examples of those
Yeah,
things
sure.
built?
Yeah. And I also found some old like scraps from lyric scraps and stuff I could share here.
Yeah, we love all those bits.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just share real quick. This is just like, so when I was sketching out the album, I was trying to make everything kind of fit, like all the things I was trying to kind of talk about, and where does this song fit in this story. And so my album was kind of about, like, the first song is about being born and about talking to a little baby about what it remembers from the past life. And then the last song, which is this song, is kind of about, the continuum of lives beyond this one. So I was just trying to map it out into, just this little scrap here. kind of where it fits in. And so, yeah, I just like to start. I'm really into sketching. I love the sketching phase. I love pre-production so much. And I'm very talky, like I'm very, I do a lot of talking with artists before we start. And sometimes people are like, are we ever gonna make music? And I like, but for me, it expedites the music making process so much that I hate kind of getting stuck with multiple creative decisions that are kind of like, to me, like, I don't like deciding on a part and deciding on how I want to record that part and deciding, like, it's too much creative, like too many creative decisions smushed into one space for me. Like, I love being really creative with engineering and knowing that we're solid on the arrangement and being like, all right, how can we really like mic this snare or something to really be musically like, you know, creative and like really tap into the concept. So I like to, I guess for me, my brain likes to partition those processes. So I'll open the session. Okay, so this is a very convoluted, this is my Pro Tools session. It's actually the mix session, so I don't want to like get too in the weeds here, but basically I organize my sessions by instrument, so I'm always starting with percussion, then going like low-end instruments, then kind of like guitar, piano, and then strings and horns, and then vocals. So all these, like here are all these grayed out tracks are all the you know, multi-tracked strings. Here's like the sub bus, and they all kind of lead down to this summing bus here. So, and then here and then all my effects, and finally the printed mix. So I think maybe what would be best here, because I could babble about anything, is if anyone has any particular questions about what they heard, instrumentation, how I recorded something, or why I chose something, I would love to start with just answering some questions, and maybe that can lead the conversation, if that's cool.
Sure, we'll give everybody a second to pop those things into the comments or to raise your virtual hand. I know I'm very interested in the vocals because you have your lead, and I also just heard some sort of like maybe vocoder or something with this low U.
Yeah, let's start there. That's a great place to start. So one thing with this album, one of the themes, or like, you know, underlying intentions that no one else needed to know, but I wanted to know as the producer. Oh, and I did want to mention one other thing, because I know a lot of you are songwriters and probably artists, and also probably producers, at least for your own stuff or maybe other people's stuff, that it was very difficult. It is difficult to self-produce. I know this, and I totally, you know, empathize with anyone who's in that boat. And I had to kind of do like here, I'll put my video back on. I do like a hack for myself where I had to divide my personality into like my producer self and then my artist self, because my artist self had all this self-talk and all this like monster voices telling me how much I sucked and telling me how much my songs sucked and everything. And I really needed to like separate that out from the producer side of me, who like I have lots of experience playing that role with other artists as producer, and I know how to be that supportive, positive, constant presence in the studio, and I needed that for myself. So I actually like named my producer self. I called him Blue, and he was like, I would talk out loud in the studio to myself as Blue in order to kind of hear those answers, because it was too hard to do it inside my head. There was just too much chatter from insecurities and all the stuff we all go through as artists. So it helped me to literally separate those two roles and speak them out loud. I probably seemed like a crazy person in the studio, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. So back to the vocal part here. Okay, yeah, this is a great thing to talk about. So one thing that was an intention on this record was to make something that felt electronic, like take a lot of cues from the way that electronic music is produced and arranged, but do everything with acoustic sounds. So there's a lot of gestures that I tried to make that would have been maybe something that you'd hear in like an EDM song, or like a big drop, or a rise, or or this vocoder thing or whatever, but I tried to do it all acoustically. So let's start with the lead, and I'll just play this chorus here. So let me just solo this.
I hear you calling, I remember, I remember. This feeling follows me forever, me forever.
Okay, you guys hear me?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So I tried to think about what I wanted, again, the intention of what I'm trying to, like, the world I want to create. And so, typically your lead vocal is centered in a mix and everything is kind of surrounding it. And I wanted this to be more weird and ghostly and kind of otherworldly. So I kind of did the opposite, where I had the lead is doubled and panned far left and right, and that's throughout the whole song. So the lead is never focused, and then the harmony part, which is made to sound like a vocoder, I just sang all the parts, is actually straight down the middle. So this is mono, even though it's 4 parts, it's just stacked mono in the middle. So let's
I hear you calling, I remember, I remember. This feeling follows me forever, me forever.
that is meant to sound like a vocoder, and so that was just a choice that I made to, people don't need to know really what's going on, but they have to I just want them to feel a feeling, so that's just one way that I chose to kind of get that otherworldliness into the song.
That is so cool. Would you turn a video on? I just like seeing your face.
Sure.
I don't think we need to turn it off unless there starts to be a problem.
Okay, cool.
That is so cool. And also just, I think you are a vocalist, so you can embrace that moniker and that whole,
I'm working on it. On it. You know how it is. We work with such incredible vocalists that we all put ourselves in these boxes. But yeah, it's all, no one can sing like us,
yes,
in the end. So
true. We have a few more questions. You want to go to those? Or did you have more to say about the vocals? Okay.
Yeah, actually, I thought of a couple things that I just would point out in the session. I'll just show you a couple little things that I remembered. So when I was talking about kind of like the electronic, like trying to get those little gestures that feel electronic, here's like some examples of that. Like here's the string part leading into the second chorus, and I just wanted to like, you know, like there's a lot of these like kind of filter sweeps and stuff that people use a lot to create tension and excitement in electronic music. And so it's sort of like taking those ideas and seeing what it's like to do it with an orchestra. So here's like just the string part. So it's just like everyone's starting in a random place and then sliding to the unison note, just to create more tension going into the chorus.
If anyone wasn't aware, Alex is on location in
Oh, sorry.
New York City. That's it. No. It's part of New York City. So that's really gorgeous. Really gorgeous. I love. Do you have experience from your youth arranging strings, or is that something you learned along the way?
I never did it when I was actually in like school for classical music, oddly, but I think I was just absorbing a lot of classical music, and I started doing it as a producer, and it seemed like it started to become a lot of my sound with artists. There's often a string component, and I think it just became an effective way for me to, kind of tell stories or create the emotions that I wanted to. I just love, just like all the things you can feel like with arranging.
I agree. It's like another voice, really, to me.
Yeah.
Did you have something else to add, or should I read you a question?
Yeah, let's go to questions.
Okay, so Orla is asking a question about drums. Do you bounce all your drums into one track rather than send each to a bus or a group? So that's a little bit of a techie question, but I think a good one.
Awesome. Great question. Let's listen to the drums. And actually, that's a great thing to talk about, because the approach to the drums here, and also in a lot of stuff that I do, is I like to sort of cheat. And this is something that I'll try to say in a succinct way, but when we're mixing, like I think the experience of being a mixer taught me a lot about songwriting and about producing, because you are at the mixing phase, you're kind of starting to butt up against reality and science, and so you have a finite amount of frequencies to work with, frequencies and volume, and so you start to think like, before I was mixing my own stuff, I was very obnoxious as a producer, just sort of like putting everything down and just handing it to a mixer and being like, you deal with it. But then I realized, like, having to deal with it, there's a lot that I had to cut out, or there's things that just won't work, and it's like you have to understand the science of that, and it started to seep into when I was arranging stuff, or when I was even writing stuff, to be like, well, I know I want this to feel really impactful, but how can I do this instrumentally so that I can get what I want emotionally, but also like stay within the laws of physics? And so with drums, I often combine like the bass instruments and the drums I'll often cheat and kind of make them one instrument. So sometimes my kick drum will actually be like my bass notes or something, or I'll try to get like a high-end sound in the bass part that can act as a snare, or like give you the feeling of a snare or something like that. So you're not stacking too much of the same, you're not being redundant. And in this song, there are a few elements that make up the quote unquote drums. I mean, there's no actual drums here, but there's a lot of elements. Okay, yeah. So I was thinking of the drum part as a whole, like I knew the part that I wanted, but I didn't know how to divide it out into different instruments to make it work in this context. So I'm just gonna play this and then sort of talk about it as it goes.
Canyon walls as the streetlights dissolve into shadows I'm chasing. So the
So I kind of like reversed everything. I actually made the snare, like the backbeat that you typically want in that kind of gesture. That's actually the upright bass doing a note with a pick. So here's that sound that acts like the snare sound. And you can hear that it has the bass part in it, but it also has that little clicky part. So I can suggest the chord progression with the drum part, and then here's the other bass part. And that's acting as like your kick drum, but it also is reinforcing the progression. And it also is staying off of the one. So typically, you have the kick drum hitting on the one, but I, again, wanted this whole song to feel kind of like unsettling or a little off. So the snare actually hits on the one, and this bass part, which is like the kick drum, hits on these off beats. So adding the snare in here. So the snare is a snare drum with the snares off, and it's tuned to the tonic of the song. That's all together kind of makes up the drum set, so to speak, in this song.
Really cool. I as a newbie to creating drums in a DAW, that I just find that fascinating. And how you tie it back to the emotional, like everything back to that emotional element that you're talking about in the beginning. Really wonderful. If anyone has any other drum questions, now would be the time to pop them in the chat before we move on to another element. Yes, how did you decide when to bring the drum in?
Oh, that's a good question, Michelle. I think, again, storytelling. I wanted the song to build a certain way. I wanted the story arc to feel a certain way. So, setting the mood in the very beginning of the song, which is just the piano riff that the whole song is based on. So one element that I was not did not talk about. So So starting with like, it's all like, if you're a director, you know, we all are kind of like movie directors when we're creating music, and it's like, you know, every scene in a movie that you're seeing, there's like 359 degrees that you're not seeing. You know, the director's like, you're gonna look at this thing because I want you to look at this thing because that's the story that I'm telling. You're totally being manipulated, you know, and that's the same thing with music. Like, I want the listener, to focus on this part in the beginning, and I'm gonna put that part front and center. I'm not gonna put anything else around it, and then I'm gonna add little things that's gonna create atmosphere. So one of the things that I put in there to create atmosphere is this waterphone part. So that's like all that's going on in the first, up to the first chorus. It's just like I'm creating the mood, I'm painting the picture I want. You know, it feels to me like nighttime, stars, and I'm just sort of painting all these things with the sounds, and then, you know, choosing what to bring in at the first chorus. So coming out of here,
Something awakens. I hear you calling. I remember. This feeling.
and another thing is that I left space. So this is also maybe not typically done, but if you notice my center channel, you know, if you think of like, you've got hard left, center, hard right as a mixer, my center channel all the way to the first chorus is empty. Everything, the piano is tracked in stereo, so it's just hard left, hard right. The sounds are swimming around left and right, and my voice is also hard left, hard right. So it was intentional that I didn't bring anything in mono center until the chorus, where it's the woodwinds and my harmony vocals, and it's sort of like, okay, all of a sudden you're focusing on this effect that's coming in. So all these choices are all part of, to me, it's all part of the songwriting, you know, storytelling stuff. I don't remember what the original question. Oh, when to bring the drums in. That's right. So it was like, I wanted to draw attention to the woodwinds and the harmony vocals at the chorus, and then the drums, and the next verse felt good for me as far as like building the dynamic. So like, here's the chorus.
I hear you calling. I remember. This feeling follows me forever. Me forever. The sidewalks I've known play an undertone of memory.
So it's just part of the flow. It's just choices. I mean, someone else might have chosen it totally different if they produced this song, but for me, that was how to push the story forward.
Love it. Since you were talking about woodwinds, Brian had asked earlier about he'd love to hear a little bit about the choices like bass clarinet and French horn, and what role did you feel that they could play in deepening the story?
Sure. So again, you know, the words that were on my chalkboard were things, to me, they were like, the textures I was feeling were like actual, you know, wood and, you know, forest and brown and things that to me pointed towards the sounds and like the timbres of woodwinds, of like soft brass. And it's like if I had words on there that were like metallic and futuristic and brittle or something, I think I would have chosen totally different instruments. But the woodwinds felt right in terms of communicating those words. And I'll just solo this part here.
I love that. I love this whole song.
Yeah, thanks, Ali.
Going along with that, Ray had asked, when you arrange especially orchestral parts, do you arrange them in the DAW or do you write it out in standard notation first?
Also a great question. So I have found, like, I definitely, I would say that the need to use my degree and make it feel like it wasn't a waste of money makes me sometimes want to write things on, staff paper. But it honestly, like for when I'm composing, it is so much easier for me to get ideas down in the DAW, writing in MIDI, and just I can sketch really fast. I hear a melody, put it down, I can save it, I can try another version, see if I hear something else. It's just very fast for workflow. And then I'll go back in. So my process with strings, and here I'll just stop the share for a second so I can talk. Yeah, my process for strings is that I will write. I will not concern myself with rules of music theory for my first sketch. I'll just do everything I want to do. I'll throw it all down, totally unrealistic, like orchestration, 17 cello parts or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter at that point. I use a sound that's like a full orchestra sound, so I have like the range of frequencies. I'll basically just get all my gestures down so that it feels like the part that I'm hearing, sort of. And then I go through with like kind of the fine-tooth comb and be like, okay, is this actually something playable, or is this something that's like, am I being redundant with my, with my intervals? Are things, do I need to have like 5 instruments doing the tonic here? Do I need to have like, am I getting all the colors I want and stuff? And then I'll go in and look at the voice leading, and if this is going to be tracked live with a quartet, or if this is going to be something multi-tracked, I have to think about that in terms of like the orchestration and like how's the voice leading of this, the viola part versus the cello part. Is there all this like weird crossing going on? Does that make sense? Is there a more elegant way to do it? So kind of do it in those steps, and then once I get it working, then I will notate it, or I'll use the Pro Tools like score editor, and I will notate it there, and then I'll usually go in and write dynamic markings and like performance markings before I have it for a session. So that's my process. I know a lot of other people do it many other ways.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Really great answers. I think this was a special, unique session, just based on your approach, and I certainly got a lot out of it. I put in the chat, you guys, the best way to stay connected with Alex is through his Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Alex Wong.
Yeah, and I'll just say also real quick that I do break down a lot of my sessions on my Patreon. So if anyone's actually interested in that stuff, Patreon is a good place for that.
Awesome. Just more ways to learn from you. You have, you're very talented.
Likewise, Allie.
Thank you. Any last questions for Alex? Do we just want to?
It looks like there was a couple more that I didn't.
Did I miss one?
One from Paige.
Sorry.
And, yeah, I'll just quickly answer. Orla said, "Did you play the drums on other instruments to represent same things in different realities?" I mean, no, but I love that. So I think it's whatever you hear, and that's our like the beauty of what we do is like once you put it out there, it doesn't really belong to you anymore, and anyone's interpretation is totally valid. I think in some ways, just in the sense of like I wanted people to like I just want to like sometimes tweak people's ear, you know. It's not that they're going to be like, oh, that sounds like you did the kick drum on an upright bass, but it's more like something is different, or like it's sort of like pay attention. You're trying to tell people, like, you know, sometimes when we hear things that we're so used to hearing, like typical arrangements or typical instrumentation or typical drum parts, we almost like shut off. Like we were like, okay, I get that. I'm gonna turn my brain off. I'm not gonna pay attention to that. I'm gonna focus on these other things. And that's actually cool for things like, you know, like I live in Nashville and a lot of songs are very lyric driven, and I almost feel like it's intentional that they push the music and the instrumentation into the background, make it more predictable so that people really focus on the lyric. And that's fine. It just depends on how you want to tell the story. So in this case, I'm trying to snap people out of maybe their expectations and say, hey, there's something interesting to listen to over here as part of the story. Pay attention. And then, so it sounds like with production, there are adds of sound, atmosphere, and then rhythms. How do you know when to add atmosphere sounds and when to introduce new? Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's just like how to, you know, develop as a producer. Like, I would say that's very subjective. I think the way I answer that is different than the way anyone else, like if Bess were to produce it, or Allie, or someone else, like they might have a different answer to that question. And it's not right or wrong. It's just like, again, it's like, what's your intention? So rhythms make me feel something different than atmosphere. And sometimes I just want to feel, you know, I think we listen with our whole bodies, and I'll hear rhythms in different parts of my body, like in my torso, in my, you know, certain internal organs, or like, you know, your chest or something. Like you hear, like when I'm mixing, I'm like, did I feel the kick drum here? Like it has to hit me in a certain place in my body before I know the EQing is right. And so it's kind of like, well, what do you want to do to somebody who's listening? Atmosphere is, it can put people up, you know, up here, and so it's just, they're all tools. So I guess it's just, what do you want to, what's the story you want to tell? That's how I would choose.
Thank you, Alex. Can we all just unmute and like applaud? Like we're in the same room for a moment. Thank you, Alex. Again, I'll send the links for his socials and his Patreon in the replay. Feel free. Thank you, Alex.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Good luck with all of your songs.
Appreciate it. Bye, guys.